Hello, my lovelies. Come on in here. Have you a seat. We have got a special day today. We've got our beautiful dear friend, Miss Pat Banks here, and she is going to talk to us about her history and her childhood, and she is going to give us all kinds of wonderful, wonderful information that we can have a better life with. So, if you give us just a second to get set up, we are going to talk with beautiful Pat here and enjoy having some company on this fine day. Hey, Miss Pat. So, the first question I have for you is if you could share a meal with anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Well, that's a deep thought. I hadn't thought of that. But I think someone interesting to talk with
Uh-huh.
would be Dolly Parton.
Oh,
I
yes.
love Dolly and her beginnings. I can relate to that very well.
Yeah.
And I would share a dinner of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, biscuits, and some kind of a pie.
Oh, yum.
That would be our meal.
That would be delicious, too.
And she would be an interesting person to
She
talk
would. She is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
to. Oh my. Well, I think back to when I was 18. I graduated from high school on my 18th birthday. And at that time, I was already, had been accepted at Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami for their nursing program.
Oh, wow.
So I left in July, moved to the campus of the hospital,
Uh-huh.
and attended class there. We lived there 24 hours a day. I had good experiences there. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
Good.
And then along came this tall, good-looking fella, and we decided we wanted to get married.
Uh-huh.
Well, you could not be in nurses training and be married.
Gotcha.
So, against my better judgment, I dropped out of
Uh-huh.
nurses training. So, it's not that I would trade my life with my husband at all, but I probably should have stayed and got my education. And that's what I would advise anybody this day and time,
Okay.
is to get yourself fixed so that you can take care of yourself and any children that you may have or parents that need help,
Yes.
that you can help them.
Yes. That's
And then
such
get
good
married.
advice. Yes.
That would be my
I love it. Okay,
other-
well, how do you define a good or a successful life?
Well, you don't have to be rich to have a good and successful life. You have to have a partner that is willing to give and take. Marriage is not 50-50. It's 10-90 most of the time, but the 90 changes from
Exactly.
back to one to the other.
Yes.
And I don't know what advice I would have, but I have just found out that having children, we had 3 children in 30 months, so we were young and busy.
Yeah.
I worked in between having the children,
Mhm.
and my mother kept our first child while I worked, and of course Tom was working also.
Yeah.
And then I had 2, and it was a little too much for my mother to have 2 boys. So I had a babysitter.
Uh-huh.
And she was with us until 15 months later, we had a little girl.
Yeah.
And then 3 people, it was too much for the babysitter.
Yeah.
So by this time, we put them in daycare.
Yes.
And that's the way we worked until we came to Spring City.
Mm-hmm.
And we came up here, and my children were 2, 4, and 5.
Uh-huh.
And we have been here almost 60 years.
Wow.
And I could not recommend a better place to
Absolutely.
have children than to be here in this community where everybody knows you, you feel
Yeah.
safe.
Yes.
And that's the way it was with my children growing up here.
Yes.
And it was, it's been a blessing all the way around.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the best and worst advice you've ever been given?
The best advice I think that I ever had was probably from my mother. And she always encouraged us to make the children happy at home.
Yes.
They have responsibilities, they had chores, and that's the way we raised them.
Yeah.
Every day they had some kind of chore, little
Mhm.
chore, big chore. And they did that the whole time they were at home and in high school until they left for college. And I can't think of any bad advice I've ever had. I've had some advice that was very annoying, and I couldn't abide with that.
Right.
But we came up to Tennessee with my mother and dad,
Uh-huh.
and they had bought this farm that we're at right now.
Okay.
And they wanted us to come up with them.
Uh-huh.
And it was at a time in our life when Tom's job, they were moving him around from one grocery store to another as store manager. And our children were soon going to be in school, and we just couldn't put them in and out of school
Yeah.
every 6 or 8 months. So we decided we would travel with my parents and travel on faith.
Yes.
That's the way we came to Spring City. And I never regret, we lived with my mother and dad for 12 years.
Okay.
And by the time 12 years was up, Tom had built them a nice house,
Uh-huh.
4-bedroom, 3-bath house.
Wow.
And it was big enough that the 5 of us and the 2 of them, we all lived there.
Uh-huh.
And it worked out wonderful. My mother really hated when we left because she missed seeing the children every day.
Yeah.
Even though we only moved to the other side of the farm, but
Right.
still it was not in the house with her.
Right.
So we have just been
Bless.
pleasantly pleased with everything here. And Tom's blood does run orange now.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, what is the best compliment you have ever received?
Well, I've had lots of compliments in my lifetime. And they fit in different parts of my life. There was a time when we lived with my great-grandparents when I was very young.
Uh-huh.
And then we lived, I spent the summers with my mother's father, and he worked in the coal mines in Kentucky.
Oh, wow, okay.
And he was a motor specialist for the mines, where they mine coal. And Anyway, he had a very prestigious job because he kept the trains running
Okay.
back into the coal mines. And let's see, when I was a product of World War II. I was born in 1938. That was the finish of the First World War, getting ready to start the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
So times were different.
Yes.
Totally different than now.
Yes.
I mean, children this day and time have no idea of what it's like to not have a hamburger every day or go down the street and get a Coca-Cola
Yes.
or something. They were not available. Everything came at a price,
Mm-hmm.
and the price was stamps.
Yes.
We were issued so many stamps
Uh-huh.
for the size of our family, and we would get those stamps every month, and they were for everything: gas, oil, keep your car running, clothes, food. Everything went to the war effort.
Right.
And when I was little, I had a deformed foot
Okay.
that kind of turned inward. And my great-granddaddy, he had a shoe shop,
Uh-huh.
Uncle Johnny's Shoe Shop. And this was in Wise, Virginia. And he knew that I was having trouble with that foot, so he would build my shoes up to where it would keep my foot from curling up and keep my toes straight. As a result of that, my foot got fixed by Uncle Johnny and his shoe shop.
Wow.
And you know, back during the war effort, there were not shoes to buy
Right.
because they went to all the soldiers and everybody. All of the everyday things
Yes.
were gone.
Yeah.
And even your food, we ate very little meat unless it was a chicken from the backyard
Right.
that my granny would fix. Or sometimes my dad would come home, he'd have a pound of bacon.
Uh-huh.
He had done a job for somebody and they paid him with a pound of bacon and maybe a box of cereal or something.
Right.
So anyway, that's how we kind of survived back during the war.
Wow.
And after the war, we moved to Florida.
Uh-huh.
My uncle had an electrical place, and back then the building industry was booming after the war.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very hard to get materials. And so anyway, my uncle offered my dad a job in Florida. So he took it, and after he had saved up enough money, we got train tickets and went from Wise, Virginia to Miami, Florida.
Oh, wow.
It took 5 days to get there
Oh, my goodness.
because the trains were so full with Army personnel taking them home as they were discharged.
Uh-huh.
And we would have to wait at the train station till another train came that took us a little further south.
Wow.
And finally, we got to Jacksonville, Florida on the fifth day, or the fourth day.
Uh-huh.
And they had a light on this palm tree on the lawn of the train station. And I thought that was the most beautiful tree I'd ever seen because they had it lit up with a blue light. I just thought that was so pretty.
Absolutely.
And it took us all night up until about noon the next day to go from Jacksonville, Florida to Miami.
Wow. And how old were you then?
I was 7 years old.
Okay.
My brother was 5.
Uh-huh.
And it was just a wonderland because when we left Virginia we were in snow that was over my head.
Wow.
And here 5 days later, we're in sunshine
Yeah.
in beautiful, warm Florida.
Yeah.
So
You enjoyed that.
we did. We were amazed at the houses. The houses were pink and blue and yellow,
Yes.
all the colors. And we had never seen that before.
Right.
So everything that we saw in Florida was truly beautiful.
Yes.
It's still beautiful, but
Right.
very different
Oh,
than
yeah.
1942, 1944.
Yes.
Those times.
Okay. What has stayed the same about you, and what has changed throughout your life?
Well, I always tried to put my children first,
Hmm.
do for them, get things for them, and to take care of my children.
Hmm.
We were churchgoers. We were Presbyterians, and our children joined the Presbyterian Church here in Spring City, and made lifetime friends
Yes.
there at the church. And that was very important for me to see. The whole time that our children were home, we had breakfast together and we had dinner together,
Yes.
supper.
Yes.
And at lunchtime, we were wherever we were at. That was lunchtime.
Right.
And I took pride in seeing that my children were fed when they went to school. They had clean clothes.
Yes.
Did the best I could.
Absolutely.
And probably some of the worst times is being with my mother when, towards the end of her life, she had
Yes.
cancer. And I took care of her.
Yes.
And I could do that because my children were in college,
Right.
out of college. And
So
when
your
we-
whole time was dedicated to your
Right.
mom. That's lovely.
And so that was a tough time.
Yes.
But we grew even closer together
Yes.
during those 4.5 years that she
Yes.
lasted. And those were tough times
Yes.
for us.
Yes. But you came out of it even stronger and closer
Yes.
together.
Yes,
So
very.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you say is the key to successful relationships?
To be forgiven for any disruptions, whether it was my call or my family or my husband or my children, is to forgive each other
Yes.
and to love each other.
Yes.
And I feel like that as long as they were in our care, that's what we did.
Yeah.
Everything our children were interested in, we were interested in it also.
Right.
Band, football, baseball, whatever.
Yeah.
We went through it all.
Yeah.
And having 3 children close together, we had football on Thursday night or Friday night and Saturday UT. So we were busy every weekend. doing those things.
Yeah.
And we did a lot in the community
Yeah.
also. A lot.
Okay, well, speaking of our children then, tell me what's one thing your children have taught you?
Well, they've taught me compassion,
Yes.
and they have, in my later years here, they try very hard for us to take care of ourselves,
Yes.
to let go of some of the things, and take time for yourself.
Yes.
And they stress that. And, you know, we live independently.
Yes.
We do our own thing. And I'm 85, Tom's 83, almost 84.
Yes.
And we're just very fortunate that we've had our health.
Yes.
And Tom worked until 1 year ago.
Yes.
He worked every day, never missed a day hardly.
Yes.
And I worked till I was 63, and then I retired.
Yes.
So that's kind of been our philosophy of taking care of each other.
Yes. Okay. Now, you touched on this earlier. How is present day childhood different than your generation lived?
Well, it's sad to say you see a lot more this day and time of less children in church,
Yes.
less children be just a player on a team, not strive to be the star of the team, but to do their best whatever they're in. And we've tried to do that. And whatever we had reserved seats at the football stadium back then it was the new high school, which
Right.
is now the old new high school. And those reserved seats, we never saw them. We had them for 10 years, never used them because we were always in the band
Right.
concession stand.
Uh-huh.
And we would sell 400 or 500 hot dogs every Friday night,
Yeah.
besides all of the other
Wow.
foods that came.
Right.
And we had some of the best people to work in those booths with us, and they were so funny,
Yeah.
and it was truly time well spent.
Yes.
We would get in such hurries, and one time Mitchell Sherrill had a new pair of cowboy boots, and he had worn them that night.
Uh-huh.
There was some kind of special skin, I don't remember what, but he was real proud of those.
Mm-hmm.
And we got in a big rush for hot chocolate.
Uh-huh.
And as Mr. Banks was bringing this tray of hot chocolate over to the window to fill an order, he dropped the hot chocolate on Mr. Sherrill's new cowboy.
Oh, no.
He felt so bad about it. And Mr. Sherrill was so gracious about it. Tom, don't worry, we'll get another pair. So that ended that way. But that's just one of the friends and funny things that happened
Yeah.
in those times.
Okay. What was your favorite toy and or pet when you were a child?
Well, we didn't have many toys
Mm-hmm.
as a child. I can remember that one Christmas we got, it was just after the war was over or just before it was over, but that's when the Slinkies came into play.
Uh-huh.
And Mother got my brother and I both a Slinky.
Uh-huh.
I think they were 50 cents at
Uh-huh.
that time. Anyway, we played with those Slinkies for years.
Yeah.
I wish I still had it.
That's right.
But anyway, that was one of our favorite.
Oh, how
I
fun.
was never much a doll person.
Right.
I did have, the brand was Horseman Doll. It
Okay.
was one of the first dolls to come out with real hair.
Oh.
And anyway, I just loved her, and I kept her dress real pretty and her shoes
Yeah.
on, everything. And I would just carry around, prop her up. Well, as brothers can do sometimes, he went out with my great-grandmother to kill a chicken.
Uh-oh.
And she had this big stump that she used that she would cut the head off.
Yeah.
Well, he took my doll out there and chopped its head off
Oh, no.
with that axe, and that was the last doll I ever had.
Oh.
So
Stinking brothers.
I was not fortunate to get another doll. That was it.
And did y'all have any pets?
We've always had dogs.
Uh-huh.
And we had outside cats.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But we had a Cocker Spaniel that was a favorite of ours for many years until she died.
Yeah.
And then we had this mixed breed of dog, and he used to lay in the bushes near the front door. He'd lay in the sand where the plants were planted because it was cool.
Uh-huh.
And if anybody came to the door selling something, which they used to do a lot, he would come out and he'd go, woof, woof, just enough to scare them. And they would either leave immediately or just stand there real
Like,
still.
if I move, will you bite me?
They wouldn't bite anybody. But that was one of my favorite dogs.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
What makes you happy?
Many things make me happy. My friends make me happy. I have wonderful friendships in church and in places that I've worked and neighbors. And my church family is very special to us. The friendships we've made, people that we've worked with, so many of them, have passed away.
Yes.
And it seems to be fewer and fewer old-timey friends
Yeah.
that we have nowadays. We are the old people now. So,
But you are our wisdom, and it's wonderful that in this time we can take this little camera and record a little bit of your wisdom and share it with the world, because more of our world needs people to help lead them and guide them and show them there are other ways to do things than what we are doing them now. And church is a big part of that. And there's not a lot of our youth in church anymore.
Right.
And that does make lifelong relationships and close fellowship.
Right.
So I'd love to see more of our children and our youth get back into
Yeah.
church.
Yes. That
And
would
our
be
parents
wonderful.
too, because like you pointed out, when as a parent you are there when you're with your children,
Right.
whether it's church or sports or school events, when you're there and
Yeah.
present, it creates such a strong family bond.
There's so many sad things that happen nowadays. You can hardly pick up a paper
Yes.
that you don't see that children have been harmed and
Yes.
in foster care, and it's just so sad
It's
to
terrible.
see that.
Yes.
And more children are being raised by grandparents
Yes.
than ever before.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's it's a good that they're there to help
Yes.
when there's nobody else.
Yes.
And the parents are just not as concerned
Right.
as they used to be.
Right. Right. Well, it's definitely a different world today.
Mhm.
Okay. What was your favorite meal growing up?
My favorite meal was my birthday meal.
Yeah.
That was when my mother would fix whatever we wanted for our birthday dinner.
Uh-huh.
Mine was always meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and peas, and a biscuit.
Yeah.
And my mother was so glad when biscuits started coming in a can that she could just peel them out and put them on the pan. She didn't have to mix.
That's
nothing.
right.
I lived through all of that. They first came out with margarine,
Oh, yeah.
and it used to be a block of margarine.
Okay.
And you take it out of the package, and there was a little capsule that came in a little separate container, and you would bust that capsule and you would squeeze out that coloring.
Oh,
And
wow.
you put it in the margarine, which was white,
Uh-huh.
and it colored it, and it made it look like butter.
Oh.
And then you'd form it into whatever size.
Right.
We had a butter mold,
Right.
and my mother put it in that butter mold, and she called it country butter.
That's
And it was nothing but white margarine.
Wow. Wow, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I've lived through all this.
What did your parents do for a living?
My mother was more of a stay-at-home mother.
Which was very common in
Yeah.
that time period.
And generations living together
Yes.
was very common.
Yes.
I was lucky. I had my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents.
Yes.
And we lived with all of them. And you don't see a lot of that anymore.
Right.
Parents are put in nursing homes and
Yes.
other caregivers and so forth, and not
Right.
living with you. Sometimes it's not an easy life.
Right.
But we always, in my generation, we always took care of our parents.
Right. Right. Okay. And so then you do remember your great grandparents.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well, tell me a little something about your great grandparents.
Well, like I said, Uncle Johnny's shoe shop, he was my great-grandfather, and he walked to work every day, probably a mile,
Wow.
into town and to his shop. And he fixed many, many hundreds of shoes in his lifetime. At this
Yes.
big machine he had was just fascinating. And my great-grandmother, she was a homebody. She
Uh-huh.
worked at home. Everything was made, every meal, every day.
Yes.
She made biscuits every day, cornbread every day. There was some kind of pot of beans on all the time.
Yes.
And then my mother would make meatloaf, little hamburger steaks, different things like that, or fried chicken.
Mhm.
And fried chicken was on everybody's.
Oh yeah, because you could have them in your yard.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was the common food back then. Everything was made fresh.
Yeah.
And you canned in the summertime, and you lived off the canned goods in the winter.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it was wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful.
You knew exactly what was in your
Yes.
food back then, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. What advice would you give your grandchildren or your grandchild on their wedding day?
Well, we just had a grandchild get married
Okay.
this past March. And she was 34. She was a lot older than I was. I was 20 when we got married. We just celebrated our 65th wedding anniversary back
Yes.
in July. And and in fact, I told Katie this. I said, don't go into this wedding with rose-colored glasses. Go
Yeah.
in with clear glasses. And if you love your husband enough, you will work everything out, and you'll have a happy life.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Well, and so many people want to quit the first time it gets hard.
right.
And they miss the joy of when you've overcome a hard time, how much closer you grow
That's true.
as a family, as a couple, because every hard time you get through together strengthens your bond and
That's
lets
right.
it reassures you that this person will be here
Right.
with me and help me get through good and bad
And
things.
have faith.
Yes.
Have your beliefs, be strong in your marriage and in your life, and don't let people take that away from you.
Yes.
You keep those things for yourself and your family.
Yes.
Don't let the outside influences and bad people, as I call them this day and time, with the narcotics and things.
Yes.
It's just so heartbreaking to see
Yes.
some of the things going on.
Yes. And nobody ever starts out planning on being an addict,
No.
whether it's alcohol or, drugs or whatever it is. Nobody intends to be an addict, but it does happen faster
right.
than people realize.
That's right. You go into these things on a dare.
Yes.
Or, not really knowing what is going to happen, and then if you are allergic, I'll call it allergic, to the prescriptions, the alcohol, whatever,
Yes.
then you've got a hard road to hoe to get rid of that urge and to get yourself straightened out.
Yes. Yes. Okay. What do you wish you knew when you were younger? Okay, Miss Pat, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I just have one more question for you. What would be the best advice that you can give for those watching today?
To take care of your family, to be there when they need you, help them with their schoolwork, be interested in their lives and their dreams, and love your family. Be there for your family. And that is my
And
words of wisdom.
that is beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us, and we are just delighted to hear your story. And we are going to be in for a special treat because Mr. Tom Banks will be here next Friday, and he'll talk to us about some of his memories as well. So thank you guys for sharing your hospitality in your home with us, and we will catch you on the next time.
Okay.
Now always remember, there's always a seat at Granny's table.